Hello again, this is Charlie Belfontaine, and you're listening to the Home Buyers Hour. Who are you, and why do you mean so much to me?
Well, I'm Sarah Torado. I work with the Kamar Group. I'm a residential and commercial real estate agent for buys, sells, leases. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah_Chicago Realtor or contact me at 773-558-6565.
Excellent.
down.
Steve, please.
Steve Davis, Kamar Group, Real Brokerage. I also am a realtor. Realtor for residential, not commercial. I'm not that cool. But you can reach me at I don't know, Facebook, as well as Instagram at I'm Steve Davis, or my cell 312-513-6314.
And Patrick?
Steve forgot where he was for a second.
I did.
It happens.
My name is Patrick Loftus. I am a real estate lawyer. What that means is if you're buying or selling your home, get me involved to make sure things go smoothly. I like to be found on the various social media outlets. Find me on Instagram, Loftus_law. Find me on TikTok at Loftus Law. You can even look at my shorts on YouTube, Loftus Law.
That just sounds dirty looking at your shorts on that.
Hey, that's where your mind's at, buddy.
And my mind is always there and stuff. I'm going to do a quick intro. My name is Charlie Belfontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our phone number is 312-544-9180. And Joey, I am going to be the most pessimistic person for this next hour.
It's a good sauce you put on spaghetti.
Because I think the economy's going to poo-poo. So tell me I'm wrong and argue with me. What's going on in the world?
No, we're going to get it from both ends, too. That's the beautiful part, right? So,
What?
obviously.
That's what I heard, too.
Yeah. No,
What does that mean?
It's a thing. Well, because we're going to see sell-offs in bonds and in stocks. So usually it's going to be one or the other. You sell stocks to buy bonds because it's a safer security net. But, I mean, China owns a lot of our bonds, and it looks like we are seeing hedge funds in China sell off our bonds and our long-dated securities. So we have seen a 200 basis point loss over the last 2 days in the rate environment, which gets us well below our 6 month, we're still technically in range, but we're at the bottom end of our 6 month range right now for trading. So while we saw we'll call it a 1 day refi market on Friday, that's gone. That's all gone. But I also know at the end of the day, people make knee-jerk reactions to decisions. Obviously, China put an 84% tariff hike on the U.S. in response to our 104% tariff hike. I mean, it's a trade war. We're living a trade war. We're going to see some really ugly economic data over the next 2 months. At least that's what futures tradings are speculating right now, which is going to indicate recession. So the Fed is going to have to cut rates, which is still going to be a problem because we're also anticipating seeing inflation continue higher because tariffs are going to affect the price of goods. So we're going to see rates come down so you can afford the higher goods, but it's just we're not in a great spot right now in the markets, which is all the more reason to buy a home if you can still afford to. If you can afford to buy when the market's not great, you're going to be very happy that you did when the market does improve.
That's interesting, but
The VA Loan Nerd. You can find me at the VALoanNerd.com.
get in there.
Yes.
Across all the social medias, it's at the VA Loan Nerd, and I'm done with it. All right.
No, you did great with that. So, but I mean, I'm almost at the opposite side, and I kind of want all you guys to beat me up on this one and tell me why I'm wrong. But and Patrick pointed out to me that I'm old and I'm a boomer. All right, and he's mean. So everybody else who's in my generation, make sure you do write nasty grams to Patrick for picking on us elderly people.
Okay, boomer.
But I come back and I start going back to, when I first bought my house, obviously in the late 80s. And then I remember I lived through the, what's that?
Nothing, God. Sorry.
No. Or actually it was the early 90s. It was 91. But then I also go back to living through as a real estate professional through 2007 to 10. And that hit hard. I remember that I keep going after the gas prices shot up there, and that kind of put a big crunch on our economy. And I get it that there were a bunch of people that had mortgages that weren't supposed to, have all these extra mortgages. But then they couldn't pay the mortgages, and all of a sudden houses got foreclosed on and everything dropped down. And I remember that, we were rocking and rolling until that light switch flipped. And then it was instantly, within like less than a week, everything just shut down. And the prices ended up dropping. At that point in time, we ended up having a house that was worth around $430, and we had an offer at $400, and I turned that down. And then the next thing is I didn't get any other offers, and the next offer was $260. And that's the one that we ended up taking, which was a very, very tough time, in myself. And quite frankly, I'm afraid. All right? I'm afraid it's going to happen again. So tell me why I shouldn't. Tell me why I should go ahead and buy houses now while it's high and not wait until the crash comes in and buy when it's low.
Because
Was
we
there a
all
high
want to stay
supply of
employed.
houses at that time?
Everybody.
Both of us.
all-
Take that, Charlie.
I'm sitting back right now. I'm going
No,
thumbs up
I-
and listening.
Joey, say it again, because you actually are
Was there
trying to
a
answer the
high
question.
supply-
You know,
Was there a high supply of houses at that time? Was there a lot of houses at that time?
There
There was a lot of houses. No,
I-
no, it's a yes or no question, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I just don't remember, so that's why I'm giving you the abadaba answer,
What it is a rhetorical question. The answer is yes. There was loads and loads of homes. When you were out in Bolingbrook or Plainfield,
Right.
They had built so many homes, and
They
there
did.
were so many vacant lots. I mean, you think about all of the construction developments that were underway in '07, that all of a sudden it was just like cobwebs on the signs and just nothing going on. And so I think, Joey, I'll hand the ball to you. I think what you're suggesting is that the answer to your rhetorical question is there was quite a high supply as opposed to the demand,
And there were a lot of foreclosures that came out as well.
which increased the supply.
That's my point.
Increase the supply. Yeah. So we're not seeing a foreclosure crisis either.
Well,
So
not yet,
we
but
see-
that takes time, doesn't it? I mean,
It depends on the situation. It depends on what's going on with the market itself. I mean, Joey's saying what Patrick was saying, which you, I believe, understand. What we're saying is that if there's no houses, there's no inventory, it's still a supply and demand situation.
right?
So the ones that have to move are going to move. The ones that don't may not buy. The ones that need to sell are going to have to sell, are going to sell. So as far as the foreclosure situation, here's the deal with that. Think about what the rate is when they bought their house, if they bought it in the last, 5 years, versus when you bought in 91 or 80 or whatever you said, right?
Yeah.
Your interest was 19%.
Right, but this was a different house than that one. That
My-
house was more like around 10%.
I get, but what okay,
Still pretty high.
that's very high compared to what it is.
Compared to today, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So, and the other thing is Joey's talking about the foreclosure situation, or you are, sorry. And the reason that Joey's saying there won't be foreclosure situation is because it's not just supply and demand, it's the fact of where the rates are or where they were when they bought. And the way that a foreclosure situation works is that if you bought and your mortgage is higher and you can't afford it and so on, right? So that's not what's happening. That's the same reason why people are staying in their homes.
Affordability today isn't that bad.
Right.
Well, that's because people have jobs and they're working and they have income coming in there. But what happens if the economy does go that bad and then all of a sudden, just like in 7-8, people start losing their jobs and they're unemployed and they can't make the mortgages anymore. I mean, I think it's a legit concern.
Let me ask Joey another rhetorical question. Joey, is there a significant difference in how people were qualifying for loans prior to, I don't know, Dodd-Frank is this thing that sticks in my mind. So when did that happen? 2010, roughly. So 15 years ago. Is there a significant difference in how people were qualified for loans prior to that would also have some, I think, mitigating effect on the idea that someone loses their job and they go straight into foreclosure?
Well, if you're asking me if we're qualifying based on documents these days, then yes, we are. We are definitely qualifying based on documented information.
That makes a big difference.
It does, right? Like, it's kind of a big deal.
And what about adjustable rates? I mean, how is that different from prior to the the Great Recession?
There are significantly less adjustable rates on the market, so, and qualifying the adjustable rates prior to Dodd-Frank, prior to all those changes in the mortgage guideline world, we were qualifying off of the teaser rate, which is the super low introductory rate on an adjustable rate mortgage. But nowadays, we have to qualify off the fully indexed rate. So as high as that rate can go, that's what we have to qualify off of. So if you use an ARM, we already qualified that payment.
So as a mortgage professional, and the only one here on this program, would you say that there are more or less risky mortgages out there today than there were, let's say, in 2008?
Significantly less, good sir. Significantly less.
So that would serve, I would imagine, to mitigate significantly, this is the word you just used, the risk that we're going to have massive amounts of foreclosures.
I would agree with that statement.
Nice. Well done.
But how does that come into play, though, if somebody is not having an income? You know, it's like, for example, I was a fireman. I had a steady income. Let's say that I lose my job and I'm no longer a government employee and I don't have income. How do I pay my mortgage? You know, whether I qualify beforehand or not, what's going to happen?
Joey, when you qualify for someone for a mortgage, aren't you looking at the big picture in terms of, I mean, anyone who borrows money to buy a home, it has to be taken into consideration by the lender that person may have at some point in the following 30 years some kind of issue with their personal economy, whether it's their income, etc. People have savings.
It's debt to income ratio is how they figure it out.
Well, you know, most people, and, you know, even if you are living paycheck to paycheck, don't end up with a zero balance across the board in all of your, in all of your liquid assets at the end of every month.
What do you mean by zero balance? Forgive my ignorance.
Well, if what you're suggesting is if I lose my job and the very next month because I have no income.
I'm not saying the next month.
All right, so how many months is it going to take me to find some sort of income? I mean, you know, there's a lot of things at play here. Number one, usually your housing payment is the last to go, right? So if I've got to cut all of my discretionary income, one of the last things to go is going to be my mortgage, whatever it costs for me to house myself and my family.
I would agree. Food, water, shelter.
Right. So how long is it going to take me to spend all of my liquid assets? If I have to dip into my 401k, if I have to dip into my IRA, if I have to go to some of these more extreme measures to fund a short-term problem with my employment, I think people are more likely to do that than to just say, well, you know, yes, I've got 50, 100k in my retirement savings, but I don't have enough to make the to make my monthly housing payment this month. I guess I'm just not going to make the monthly housing payment. Likewise, many lenders are going the route of giving people forbearances. You know, it's not a profitable enterprise to put people in the foreclosure. And if somebody goes to a lender, and I highly recommend if you're in a pinch, contact your lender and explain the hardship. And I would guess you're more likely than not to get some sort of relief from them in the form of a forbearance or something along those lines. You know, they'll give you a few months if it looks like you are in a temporary situation, because if you can resume making those payments, and all they got to do is tack those 3, 6, 9, 12 months onto the end of the loan like they did in COVID, it's still a more profitable enterprise for all involved than to put you into foreclosure, which ties that property up for minimum 2 years with no income and nothing to show for it.
So when you do a closing, Patrick, you always go over everything. If you don't pay, they can come after you, this, that, whatever. What is the amount of time that if you stop paying your mortgage, is there a specific type of amount of time before the bank can actually foreclose on your property?
Yeah, there's like a lot of time. I don't know all of the details in terms of like the different notices, but there's like before when you stop making payments, it's like a good 60 days before the whoever the servicer is notices, and then maybe at that point they'll send out, like, there's like a 30-day and then there's like a 90-day. I mean,
So it's like a 6-month
it's
deal.
like a good 6 months before they can even go to a court to start the process of asking.
If that, right? Because I mean,
If it even makes sense for them to do that, they may just go, another route. And beyond that, another thing we're not talking about is the amount of equity a lot of people have in their homes. I mean, if you've owned your home for more than, I don't know, 2-3 years, you're probably sitting on a decent amount of equity. If you get into kind of a worst case scenario situation where it's just like, man, this is just not working, and I'm pivoting to a lower paying career or whatever it is, you're more likely to be able to take that home and sell it to somebody who can afford it, and then and pay off that loan. People are not going to end up underwater in the same way because of everything else that I just talked about. So we're really not in my amateur analysis we're not on the precipice of a 2007 2008 situation. Maybe with the stock market we are, in which case get all the cash you can to buy the dip, but it's a recession is like this word that it sends panic into people's hearts, and
so does the bubble. Remember that one?
Well, and there are not an insignificant number of people who think we're in a bubble, and those people are entitled to their opinions. But I've not really heard anyone who holds that opinion articulate any reasons that are sufficient to give me pause. So it's more like a hope. If you're someone who just doesn't see that you'll be able to afford the house that you want to buy, you're hoping that it's a bubble so that it pops and then you can swoop in and buy the house for what you want to pay for it.
And Joey, can you explain to us again why it's not a bubble?
Is it something related to supply?
Promise us it's not a bubble.
It just
Joey.
might.
Guarantee me it's not a bubble.
But the
Sir,
supply
I
and
will
demand
not do
change-
that. Come on now, you freaking lawyer.
But the supply and demand can change at any time. I'll concede that there's, not a big supply right now, and there still is a huge demand. But, I've also seen those change as well.
Yeah, but the supply has to do with, obviously, the people that are selling. If you have a property and your rate is a good rate, let's just go with that, you're not going to sell.
That's a motivator to keep.
Unless you have to. Correct.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this, and Sarah, you could back me up on this, is that if you have a lower rate, you're most likely not going to sell unless you have to. Mm-hmm. Or because it's lucrative to sell. But if you're in a different time of the market where we're talking about a recession aspect and you want to sell, but the recession, so people aren't spending as much money, well, you're going to spend your house, you're going to sell your house for less. So why would you do it unless you absolutely had to?
And consider if we go up, to from whatever we have, 4% unemployment to 8% unemployment, that still means 92% of people are employed. That's the vast majority of people will be tightening their belt, perhaps, but not in a situation where they're absolutely, in a dire, I'm days or weeks or months from being on the street. I mean, it's just, you don't go to that place overnight. And, sure, demand can change. Demand can be quite fickle, and certainly the seasonality of demand is suggestive that that it is, perhaps something that can go up and down pretty quickly, not necessarily supply. Outside of I don't know, Joey, you talked last week about Southwest Florida, where you've got a pretty particular set of circumstances that have come together between insurance costs and recent events in terms of weather and different things that are putting people off of buying and owning real estate there. They've just, the risk analysis doesn't bear out for most people. But we don't really have any of those existential pressures on our real estate market here in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, Florida is its own beast. Every time there's a hurricane, people leave.
That's true.
Yeah, there was a nasty one 2 years ago. My realtors were literally praying the rosary in their attics because the water was coming up to their feet in the attics. Their houses ended up I mean, they're alive today, but it was like a very harrowing time. And now, because I'm a jerk, I can't remember the name. Hurricane Ian, right? So what happened after Ian? Obviously, insurance companies started to pull out because of the amount of money they had to pay out for the damages. But people left Florida, right? And then, which is, good and bad if you're a mortgage guy because you were helping people buy across the country. But then less than a year later, those same people were moving back to Florida. So Florida's a really weird market in that way. The Midwesterners who moved down there, and I say Midwesterners or Northerns, whatever, because of the snow, they move down there, they love it, they love it, they love it, bad weather, they go back. And then they realize, oh my God, I'd rather deal with a hurricane than all this snow, and then they go back again. So Florida's a weird market because it will always come back. It's just people have to, they wait to see what the next hurricane season is going to be like. It's a very reactive area.
It's a very boom and bust place, and it's been that way since they drained the swamps in the early 1900s. So trying to apply any kind of fundamentals that exist in Florida to any other part of the country is you're going to end up with some wrong conclusions. I mean, the Midwest, here in Chicago and the rest of the Midwest, we don't really deal with those booms and busts. We're pretty flat, and it's frustrating for people that are trying to take their primary residence and have it appreciate and then take that money and do something more with it because you go, I'm just not making it with the kind of appreciation I want. In Florida, you can definitely do that, but you can also, lose a ton of money on real estate in Florida, and it's Mother Nature that is largely going to be the driving factor, and good luck predicting her.
Yeah, big fact.
But even with all this stuff, the same thing is in California too, isn't it? They get these big pendulum swings when it comes to prices. And, I don't know. I guess I'm still a little bit squared. California is a very big state.
California's got its own unique characteristics because of, the California dream, where everyone sort of envisions that as having a single-family detached home. You just don't have a lot of multifamily in Southern California, and you run out of space because you see what happens.
It's also uber expensive out in California.
Well, and those are the underlying fundamentals, which is that you just don't have enough space for the people that want to live there. It's a great mild climate. It's a good economy, but there's, for the number of people that want to experience that, there's not enough room because most of those folks want to. They want to have a single-family detached home. They also have this, I'm going to misstate this, but there's the laws on property taxes are such that once you own a property, you kind of, that's your property tax bill, whatever it is. And then if you go to sell and you buy a like property, your property tax bill jumps up to what the market rate would be. So there are some non-market influences that cause some additional problems when you talk about trying to figure out what Southern California is going to do, and that's a thing all over California. I mean, if when there's not that much land to deal with, that's where you start to get a lot of appreciation. Look at a map of Florida, look at a map of Southern California, the Bay Area. You look at San Francisco, look at some of the hotter neighborhoods here in Chicago. I mean, you're not making any more Wicker Park. You're not making any more Lincoln Park.
But that's also why the acquisition is so high, i.e. land.
Right, and whereas if there's a lot more space for Harvard to get bigger.
You mean Harvard, Illinois, right?
No,
I'm a little slow here.
Yeah.
All right, coming
Talk about
across
Boston.
yes,
Yeah.
Yes, let me jump.
talking
into
about
it.
how big the campus is. That's what he's trying to get at.
Boston real estate.
No. This is, I don't know. I'm just always freaking out about a lot of stuff like that, and I guess I just don't want to, get harmed again. I mean, last time when that 07, 08 hit, I was surprised. I was like, no, everything's going good. It's good. It's good. And then everything shuts down, and I didn't react quick enough, and I remember that we went negative. We ended up spending a lot of money figuring out just whether through all this stuff, and I didn't change anything. I'm going to sit a little more alerted this time around.
I think that's good. I mean, I think that's very important as far as making sure that you're kind of not sheltering in place, but at the same time, like you're making sure that you're not making spending excess of funds unless
different situation right now.
Right.
You know, back then I still did have, you know, a mortgage, so I owed money on the house at that point in time. And I didn't really have a lot of savings, but I was making a great amount of money.
Did you hear that
at
low
that
key
point in time.
flex?
What's that?
Did you hear that low key flex?
What does that mean?
At that time, I had a mortgage. You know, that was something I had to deal with. You know,
It was a pain in the butt.
Moneybags Bellefontaine doesn't have a mortgage.
Doesn't have a mortgage.
I cut my overhead down quite a bit.
That is the goal.
We love you, Charlie.
What do you think, Sarah?
Well, you know,
Sarah's all quiet over here. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I mean, you guys are going.
No. What do you think about this market? What do you think is going to happen? What's your
I think this market calls for investors.
okay?
whoa,
Explain
that
that.
I'm interested
This
in.
is
yeah.
interesting.
Because I don't like I'm investorist.
Okay.
You know, so I'm very prejudiced against investors.
So many
Are
prejudices.
they a protected class? Can I be prejudiced against investors?
What?
I don't think they're
I
protected.
don't think they're a protected
All
class.
right, good. So
All right,
let's
so
hate
go
all
on.
the
I wanna hear more
investors.
about
I
it.
mean,
Hedge
this whole
fund.
economy freak out. As of now, rates are kind of staying the same, maybe trickling a little lower, but the prices of houses are increasing because the supply is low. The best people to act on this is probably investors because they can afford a property, and the idea is wherever the market goes, you're buying a property where you're producing an income, and then or you're buying a property that you're improving to resell because you're increasing the supply. They're the ones that I tend to focus on to kind of fix the situation we're in.
So you're making
Buy the crappy houses on the block,
Right.
fix them, and then let me resell them for you.
Sure, of course. All right, but you saying that, you just said there's no supply, so therefore the rates may come down a little bit, and therefore but also the costs are going up. What do investors buy? They buy
Multi-units.
a deal.
Yeah.
Well, how are they going to get a deal if the property prices are going up?
Because they have to buy now rather than them waiting to buy later, like everyone else is waiting for the rates to do something fun for them and in their favor. You buy now at the price being low while prices are still going to increase. They're going to get that piece of the cake later because they bought it when they were at this lower price.
Joey?
While we're waiting
Sorry, I
for
was muted. I've been muted for a
love
long
it,
time
dead air.
because
It's a yes or no question,
I have my
Joey.
3-year-old here. I have my 3-year-old here, and
We
he's
know,
been taking
Joey.
up a lot of my time.
We know.
Oh, you can hear him.
Oh, absolutely.
No. Yeah.
Investors, Joey.
Investors,
why are
Joey,
investors
investors.
sitting in a good position right now?
I have more investors buying up in the market right now.
Interesting.
Myself. Well, I mean, oh my God! All right, so obviously investors they're worried about cash flow. They're worried about appreciation, right? I think cash is generally king, but I know a lot of them are very. It seems to be at least focused on overlying market trends and gaining equity off of appreciation, then knocking out 31 exchanges, buying more properties that are going to cash flow better. But if we're running into an area where buyers are getting scared, investors are just going to eat up those properties and charge.
Investors
the
are the
rent
ones
and
that
go
aren't
off.
afraid
Yeah,
and have the power to make the moves.
exactly.
But a lot of those
So-
investors is why we have a short supply as well. I mean, there's a
Oh,
tremendous
BlackRock
amount
is
of.
the devil.
Say again?
I'm sorry?
BlackRock is the absolute devil. The corporations that buy up all these properties.
Yeah.
They're the absolute devil.
I would agree. You know, and then you hear a whole bunch of the Airbnbs and
That's all
and stuff
gone.
like that. Say again?
In Chicago, you can't find that unless you own the building.
What do you mean?
You can't do Airbnbs and condos unless you actually own the building itself.
But that's condos. What about houses or?
Houses you can do, but you're not finding that as much. In my opinion, what do you
It's
think?
tough. There's a lot of restrictions on
Right,
Airbnbs
people-
in the city. I mean,
Right.
I think Airbnb, the viability of it really depends on where you're at.
And here's the other thing. Who
You have to
wants
be
an
near public
Airbnb?
transportation.
What's that?
For Airbnb, like if you're an investor for that, it has to be near public transportation.
Yeah, and you're not
near
gonna.
bars
Who
and
wants an Airbnb
restaurants.
in the suburbs?
Right, you got to think when you're visiting somewhere as a tourist, and to do a house, I don't know. Like, how often are you traveling with enough people to rent a whole house? especially like to Chicago.
Not Chicago.
I'm just
Right.
gonna raise my hand. It's like almost everywhere I go, I kind of like doing a house. You know,
That's because you've got
You're
like a whole
fancy.
family you're bringing with, though.
we do bring a bigger group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, and not
You
everybody
know?
does that when you
Yeah,
come
but
to Chicago.
but if you visit Chicago, you're not going to stay in the suburbs and go downtown to
Right.
shop or
Some
whatever.
people will.
As a tourist. Okay.
Right, but I'm not going to put my dollar on some people as an investor.
I'd want to do some research on whether for example, if let's say I don't know if I
We have
thought,
2 realtors here that do this.
We are the research.
I got
just
two
we are the research.
realtors here that
That's
I
right.
gotta talk to about this.
We do the research. We are the research.
I wish you were here, Joey. I need backup.
Dude, I need to come out. I'm actually going to be flying to Michigan at 1 a.m. today. 'Cause-
Hey.
How do you even find a flight that leaves at 1 a.m.?
Yeah, I didn't. My assistant did, and I'm very thankful for you, Caroline. Thank you for that 1 a.m. flight. That's going to be awesome.
Seriously,
No, dude. Yeah.
I would not want a pilot that is like. I mean, I don't know.
Have a
I
seat.
love traveling in the middle of the night. Airport's empty. Security check is quick. When I get here, no one's in my way.
Man, those red eyes are.
Yeah,
oof.
see?
Those are oofy.
I don't know if he was being sarcastic, thanking her for the 1 a.m., but I prefer that.
Well, I fly back at midnight too. So
Okay,
I'm there
yeah.
at 1 a.m. and then I fly right back at midnight. So
Yeah.
I guess Caesar because he can
Quick
sleep on
in
the
and out.
plane.
Yeah.
that wouldn't be for me.
Anyway, real estate.
Real estate. Yes. Go back to your
know.
go back to your theory. You need to do research.
You know what? Do your own research.
I don't need to.
No, but I mean, listen. If I was going to even consider Airbnb, I'd have to look at and see if it made any sense. I mean, would it make sense to, for example, have like a small home near Naperville that
No.
when people come in, maybe my research would lead me to that conclusion. Would I rather?
You're not near an airport, so how does that make sense for anyone? If anybody's staying at a house in Naperville, it's because they have family there.
Exactly.
It's going to be a big house, so they need to be traveling with family. They're not near public transportation, so they have to rent a car. There's too many things working against somebody getting an Airbnb in Naperville.
Patrick, research. Right
Yeah,
there.
fine. I'm certainly not in the market to do that. I would probably, I just wouldn't do Airbnb. It's too much labor intensive for me. Just and to pay all the people you would need to make it not labor intensive, and you are subject to the whims of a very volatile part of the economy. And just no, thank you. I would rather invest in something that's a little more hands off.
No, and I got you, and I'm not. And maybe I just didn't say it right. I'm hearing that a lot of people that do own Airbnbs are starting to unload. And I'm trying to focus more on the supply and demand of what you guys were saying. And I know that when people were buying a bunch of Airbnbs, that removed the stock from the supply. So now our supply drops, and we still have the same amount of people that want to be homeowners, but we lose the houses because they're being bought up by the investors. Same thing with the rental properties and things like that. We see a lot of that stuff happening. We even see the rental costs going skyrocketing, for people. So,
I think if you are in a part of the country where tourism is a larger percentage of the economy, like New Orleans would be a good example. Probably a lot of people got involved in Airbnb, and I know there was a lot of complaints from locals about that. Not that we don't have a smaller tourism sector, but our tourism sector is a much smaller portion of the economy in Chicago. I don't think that I don't think that's the best place to try to work the short-term rental game. I would rather be in Nashville or New Orleans or maybe not Savannah, too close to oceans that seem to be doing things that are bad for real estate. But Central Florida, great place because people. That's even if they do cut down on their tourism spend, for some reason the mouse gets them down there. Even despite that, they'll take the credit card and worry about the balance later.
that 6-foot rat still owes me a lot of money. Just saying.
He's not having a magical time.
I'm not having a magical day.
Very goofy.
Yeah.
Inside jokes are fun for me.
Yeah, no,
Where's
nothing ever
VJ?
goes in this thing. And like when I ended up selling the house, and I mentioned before, it was worth 430, and we sold for 260, and obviously that's what it was worth, was 260, because that's what somebody would pay for it. And it was, I was almost teary-eyed. I'm like, holy cow, how can I lose so much money on a house in such a short time? And then I ended up buying another property in Northbrook, Illinois, and then a couple years after that thing shot right back up, and all the money that I lost, I ended up getting it all back again. So
But it's
I
a bell
broke
curve.
even.
It's a bell curve. It goes like this.
Well, I guess as long as you're in the game, then you're going to just take it on the long run. Doesn't matter which house you're in, as long as you're in the game.
Well, it's the same thing as stocks.
I was just thinking that's the same thing as the
See,
stock
now the
market.
stocks I'm
it's gonna
afraid
dip,
of.
it's gonna
That I'm-
rise, but if you're in it for the long haul,
Right. You can't.
You gotta wait it out.
That's the thing too. Is like some people want instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've always been an instant gratification guy. Part of my learning disability, but at the same time, it's also because I need to know what's going on. I need to know what's going to happen. I need to know blah 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 blah. Right. So again, when it comes back to talking about is it going to be a recession? What is it going to do with real estate? What is whatever? We don't know, and you can't worry about things you can't control. I try to tell this to my wife all the time.
I worry about everything.
Yeah, well, there you go. I don't know where to go with that. There's no reason though. So only worry about things when you have to worry about them. I have a different way of looking at things now because of that. Now, do I always practice that? Absolutely not. But I try, because the thing is that if you don't look at it that way and you're constantly worrying, well, then you're going to have anxiety and unwanted stress and so on, and none of us need that.
There's medication for that.
There is.
Charlie,
thank goodness Illinois gummies. are
Medification? Did you just hear medification?
Charlie, how many
Gotta look it up.
recessions have you lived through in your long and distinguished life?
Why do we keep going
Well,
there?
yeah, why do we keep going there?
He's old.
I'm going to,
I mean, look at him.
I
He's
think we had,
old.
I would almost say that it was
5 or
different
6,
levels
right?
on the eights is what
Okay.
I like to refer to it. So I can remember, '08, obviously. I can remember '88, was a drop, and that's when I was
We had a
buying
.com.
and stuff like that. So there were a few.
So,
But
and-
08 is the real one
and how-
that hurt.
And how many of those recessions involved a foreclosure crisis?
Well, 08
Only
did.
the one, right?
Yeah, that I'm aware
So
of.
when people talk about recession, yeah, you remember the most recent. Well, the most recent one was COVID, but which did not result in a problem with housing.
No,
at
we
least
were
not.
stupidly swamped. Busy.
Yeah, I mean, April was a little bit like, I wonder what's going to happen. And then, forget it. I don't remember anything from May of 2020 until about May of 2022. It's just a big blur other than getting married. So
that simple, stupid travel trouble game that we ended up playing every day drove me nuts too, and that reared its ugly head. Just saying, I came back from vacation and all of a sudden that travel trouble game. Have you ever played Trouble? I hate that game.
Of course I have.
It's the worst game in the world.
Why are we talking about trouble?
Because I'm going through some issues right now and I'm having problems. All right, that's why.
So what does that have to do with the game?
Because I played it during COVID, and it's a horrible memory because I never
Win?
won once. We must have played 200 games, and I never won once.
And it could
there's
be
other
worse.
games.
It could be worse. You could
We
try to
only
fix your.
played Travel Trouble, and I never won once. It's that and that train game. That's the other thing I can't
Train
win.
game?
Yeah, the Mexican train game. You know what that is? It's like dominoes. and-
Mexican dominoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Thank
like
you.
What?
it's dominoes, but there's like 6 sets of the dominoes, and you can play with multiple players, and
Yeah.
you make like
Why
the
is it
lines.
called
It's called
the
a train.
train game?
Because the way you set up the dominoes, it looks like a train coming out of this centerpiece.
It's
It's a lot of
probably
fun.
got-
It's
it's-
like a family group game.
It's not fun. It's horrible. It's terrifying.
You're playing
it's
with the wrong
terrorist.
people, Charlie. It sounds like you're playing with a bunch of cheaters.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
probably true.
Yes. Joe, my brother-in-law, she just called you out. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I digressed. We were talking about something about
Right.
Maybe real
So-
estate.
recessions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we were talking about
real estate,
recessions, right? And I guess the ultimate.
He's a pilot,
I don't want to talk
and I
about
do love him,
train game.
but he does cheat on the train game.
Sounds like something else.
The idea.
Lee, hey, so you've been through. You said on the 8s, or however many that means. Let's say 5 or 6. recessions in your adult life, and I think your response to me was only one of them involved a housing/foreclosure crisis, and that is a piece of data that ought to be put into the calculation in terms of what might happen this go around. And we've been saying it for the whole 3 years we've been doing this podcast, that the metrics today are different from the metrics that we all witnessed and experienced in that mid to late 2000s, where there was so many more houses than people wanted. And even if we see an uptick in inventory, there's enough buyers out there. Even if a significant portion of them decide to go hibernate until the weather clears up economically, to soak up a considerable amount of more supply. My two researchers over here, can you confirm or deny what I just said in terms of my supposition?
I don't know what a supposition is, so why don't you answer
It's
that
different from
question?
a suppository, but yeah, go ahead. Am I right or am I wrong? That we will have, if we had more supply and even if we had some portion of less of demand, that we would still probably be nowhere near equilibrium.
Why does he keep talking so fancy?
So
don't.
I actually know what equilibrium means though, so we're good there.
Suppository.
It's very hard to do this podcast with you today. The fact is that if we have more properties, then we would have the buyers out there, because there's a larger demand. The buyers out there would be able to find more places. Therefore, the prices at a lower price. But because of the fact that we don't have a lot of inventory, and what they're saying is we're going to run into this and deal with this for the next 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. So any seller out there that is thinking about selling, you're going to be in the driver's seat most likely for a couple of years.
And that's what's been happening.
Right.
Because as a seller, there's low supply. You're able to charge more because people want your property. People that are out there buying are serious and they need somewhere to go. So if they like your property enough, they're going to pay that price. And it's not just going to be one person. You're going to get multiple offers. So now people are trying to outbeat each other and then offer you more than what you were even asking at your higher price.
I heard a realtor the other day tell me, there's not, the bidding war is going to go away. How are the bidding wars going to go away if there's no inventory?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, and that kind of circles back to my question. I think what you guys are suggesting is that more supply would not necessarily cool that off, even if we had fewer buyers, just because
they cool it off a little bit because there'd be more inventory, and then the buyers can slowly choose a property, so they can actually go back for a second time. Right now, they get one shot show. Within an hour, you're putting an offer in, you're not. And if you're waiting, that's okay. But that property better not be enticing to anyone else, or it better be too high for everyone else to afford it based on what they think its value is.
So we've got some wiggle room.
But that also goes to different areas as well, different markets, different demands, right?
Yeah, but I mean, yes, but I put a property on the market, didn't even put it on the market, did private showings, and it was 125, and I'm getting almost 1.5 right now for it. That's over $250,000 more for a property. Now, some would say, oh, well, you listed it too low. Did I? Or is it the fact that there's no properties out there, so people are paying more? They know they're going to pay more for what they really want. So I think the fact is that if there's more out there, then you're going to have the ability to not have to pay as much. But with less out there, how bad do you want that property? And that's really what it comes down to. So even with everything that's happening right now, I just talked to an investor the other day. They got 2 properties. They're like, what should we do? We don't want to be landlords anymore, but we don't know necessarily if we want to sell them. Maybe we rent them again and we just hire a management company. That's an option. But at the same time, if you bought it for $200 and you can sell it for $300, and then you want to buy something new anyway, then why not get rid of both those properties and make a little bit of a profit, and then buy something else and build new equity?
Steve, you told me a story yesterday, and
this is bad.
I want to, we've beaten the economy thing to death. I mean, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and none of us has any. We don't know, and we don't have any control over it.
Joey should.
But Joey.
Nobody's gonna know.
Dude,
Joey-
don't throw me under that bus, you
Joey,
mother.
Yeah.
please. I need some predictions and some guarantees on those predictions. Thank you.
Nostradamus.
But Steve, you were telling me a story yesterday about someone who you were working with who won a bidding war and then realized, whoops, I think I bid too much.
Yeah.
Is that like a one-off, or is that something that you're seeing more of, or higher instances of that?
No, it's a one-off right now, but I mean, it can happen. It's called buyer's remorse. It's something that
I've seen a couple of them.
I know you have. And the thing is that
That's aggressive.
I think that's it's meaning I agree with you, right? And I've seen them as well. Now I don't see them that much. You probably see them more because of what you do, but
Yeah, I had one like 18 hours after I got the contract. It was like I had the termination letter.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
right, exactly. So this guy saw a property, loved the property, wanted to go after it. I talked to the agent, asked her the questions you need to ask. What does the seller want? What's important? All these things. And then we figured out, okay, this is what you can afford. This is the number you're okay with as far as a monthly obligation. And he's like, all right. And I'm like, fine, let me go get the house for you. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I don't think I'm going to get it. There's 3 other offers, so on. Well, an experienced agent, such as myself, such as Sarah, we're going to know exactly how to play this game. And you play the game as well as you can. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But so with this particular buyer, I was able to play the game well, and we ended up winning. And I told him, and he's like, wait a minute, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I got it. Congratulations. This is awesome. Right? He's like, oh, man, that's great. Yeah. And then the next morning, I don't have a signature. And I'm like, it's kind of odd. So I reached back out. And he's like, yeah, I just don't feel comfortable spending that much money. And I said, okay, no problem. And he apologized profusely to me. And I'm like, listen, it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter to me. I need you comfortable. So yes, this happens. Buyer's remorse does happen.
Yeah,
the fact of all of a sudden realizing, wait a minute, I have to pay how much a month? I'm comfortable with this number, not this number. So my advice to a person such as that, or someone that Sarah's taking out, or she would vice versa to me, is don't show them properties that are over a certain value where you're going to have to spend more money. Because here's the thing. This is the other thing that I've been telling buyers. If your value or your price point is $500, do not look at $499. Look at $450 and lower. And the reason being is because you need wiggle room to be able to play the multiple offer game if you have to.
This is why Joey likes to qualify buyers at the very top of what they can qualify for, because they feel really comfortable
You
spending.
leave me out of this.
And for those of you, I do have to throw a disclaimer. Patrick is bilingual. He speaks both English and sarcasm. And that was the secondary language that
Buy
he was just
something.
saying.
Steve is so good at playing the game. He could have given you some tips on travel trouble and Mexican train game.
Well, let's not
Okay,
go
I
ahead, and
seriously
he's
don't
trying to
understand
get
this
there.
Mexican train game thing, okay? I know what trouble is. But
Oh, it's travel.
We know
trouble.
you
Mexican
know
train
trouble.
game is a
One.
different... I've never heard of that before.
It's in Tijuana. It's something else.
No, geez. Let's go back to. Yeah, but it goes back to different people and different reactions.
Sarah's not saying anything. She's just over here listening to us going,
She's like,
oh my
can they
God.
cut me out of this entirely?
Right, we
so I
keep
don't
veering
have to
off
be-
and talking about games and things.
I don't
You
know.
guys, pay attention.
I don't.
It's
yeah, no,
the
thank you.
ADD medicines hasn't kicked in
All
on
of you
me
guys.
yet.
The
Thank God I took
medication.
mine this morning. The medification. Mine is working.
Well,
According to Patrick.
it's a suppository.
I do want to bring up 2 clients that I've been working with, this last week. And one of them, it's, they ended up doing a Zoom call with me after the inspection. And as soon as we started on there, they told me they're not moving forward with the house based on everything that's inside the home inspection report. And I didn't even get a chance to chat with them. And we're going through the home inspection report, and I'm like, we're talking about loose outlets, and we're talking about,
Minimal.
what I felt was minimal. And it's not my decision. And I'm never going to criticize somebody else's decision and what they want to do. I kind of want people just to be educated on what the real problems is, how much it's going to cost, how serious is it, and then hopefully they could work with one of you two to figure out how much leverage they have and what they should negotiate for. All right, sometimes they have some, sometimes they don't. Everything's different. And so I got that, and that person bailed out on, I just couldn't see anything that was serious in that report. All right. And I shared them with them. Here's, these are the numbers, and we use that HomeWise, and we show them what it could be. And then I have another client right now asking me for a referral for a structural engineer. In fact, that was this morning before I came on here. And I'm not a pro. I'm not pro contacting structural engineers. All right. I figured that if it's bad enough, let's cut that guy out, go straight to the foundation repair person. If it's, we can't determine if it's still moving just by visiting a property one day. We need 6 months to a year. All right. So it comes by there. Now, this particular property, the sellers of the home did say that it has moved in the last 2 years. All right, so now it's a significant problem. And he wants to get a structural engineer out there. But again, I'm like, let's get the foundation repair company out there and go this route. But the point I'm trying to make is every individual is different. That moving foundation on a hill that it's opening up, been repaired, still moving, and he's probably looking at maybe 20,000. He's going to need about 10 to 20 piers, hydraulic piles, to hold this thing up there. And that doesn't bother him at all, not in the least bit. And this is one of those, flips by an investor that I'm not too impressed with either. One of the guys that'll cut out a lead pipe and put in a copper stub just so it looks like copper pipes. And I'm like, I hate those investors.
Sketchy.
Yeah, well, the harder part about that, too, is the fact of when you're going after a property and they're not doing the right construction anyway, and you never even know because it's behind walls. So
there's a lot of stuff that is hidden and things like that.
Right.
And even we have clients out there, even when you tell them something's wrong and they ignore what's in the report, and then they move in there and then they're like, hey, this is bad. Yeah, that's why we told you it was bad.
That sounds familiar.
And it is, because that's also happening right now.
On the other hand, the appraisal comes in and it's $30K over what the purchase price is, and you go, neat. I don't have to. I'm going to keep that one in my pocket because I know something they don't know, and it's all those little fun moving parts that make this so darn annoying.
It does. Joey, we're running out of time and stuff like
Yes,
that.
sir.
If you don't mind, can you give me your contact information again?
I guess so. So, Joey Matthews, the VA Loan Nerd. You can find me at thevalonernerd.com. Across all the social medias is at the VA Loan Nerd. You can call or text me at 630-235-2405.
And even though you are passionate about our vets, and thank you for that, by the way, you do other mortgages. You don't just do veteran mortgages. And I think that's important to say.
I want to be the number one VA guy in Chicagoland because there's so much crap that I fix and it doesn't need to be fixed. So, just come to me first. We'll be good to go.
Outstanding. Sarah, Steve, please.
Sarah Torado here with the Kumar Group, powered by Real Brokerage. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah_Chicago Realtor. Call or text me at 773-558-6565.
Steve Davis, Real Brokerage, Kamar Group as well. You can find me on Instagram at I'm Steve Davis or on Facebook. And my number is 312-513-6314.
Patrick Loftus on Instagram, Loftus_law, on TikTok, Loftus Law. My shorts are on YouTube, Loftus Law.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Special thank you to Devin Tingle. He's the producer, makes us all work. My name is Charlie Belfontaine with